She's an award-winning writer, a hunting guide, archery and rifle instructor, keynote speaker, and all-around outdoors woman who encourages you to get outside, hunt, fish, shoot, and savor all that life has to offer. And now, here's your host, Mia Anstine.
Well, hey, hi, hello, you all. It's great to be here visiting with you again. Oh my goodness, I have a whirlwind of events coming up, and I'm excited to get some content and share that with you in the coming months. But for right now, we are in preparation for SHOT Show, for the women's waterfowl hunt that we visited with Lorraine Wolf about, and also for the SCI convention. And in the middle of all of this, it's also the beginning of the legislative session and all that kind of stuff. So I wanted to kind of continue with this sharing of Safari Club International by sharing SCI and what they do, and just kind of give you more of an in-depth dive about that, because I know that I've shared SCI with you guys a lot, and it's kind of a here and there things that I've been involved with and stuff like that. But today I have an extra special guest for you, and so I want you to meet Laird Hamberlin from SCI. Stay tuned.
Hey guys, are you looking for a stylish concealed carry shirt? Check out Tarn Cap Gear. With print reducing patterns, concealed carry snaps, and minimal branding, Tarn Cap's cloak of invisibility is what you have been waiting for. Visit mia.limited/tarncap and use the code Anstine for 10% off your purchase. Again, that's mia.limited/tarncap and use code Anstine for 10% off your order.
Whether at the range or in the field, WSI Sports Hypertech bamboo tanks, tees, and leggings will have you covered. Visit WSIsports.com to support the show and use the affiliate code MACO10 for 10% off your purchase.
Okay, so Laird has taken an extra special moment out of his busy schedule to visit with us today. Everything that we talk about, as usual, will be listed in the show notes, so you can check that out either below the episode or on miaanstine.com. If you want to reach out with questions, you can go to safariclub.org and find them, or you can email me. My email address is contact@miaanstine.com. And without further ado, I hope you enjoy this episode. And I want to welcome you to Mac Outdoors, Laird. I'm happy to see you, and I'm really excited today to share SCI because I've spoken to my audience, my listeners, for years about SCI and kind of talked to them about projects that I personally have worked on here locally. And recently, we had Lorraine Wolf from the foundation on to talk about some projects where I'm going to be helping guide. And so I just thought I would share with convention coming. I want to share SCI and also just visit with you about who you are. So would you introduce yourself to my audience and let them know what you do?
Well, absolutely, Mia. We've known each other for a number of years, and thank you for having me. My name, for those that are listening and watching, is Laird Hamberlin. I am the CEO of Safari Club International and Safari Club International Foundation. April will be 5 years that I will have been in this chair, and it has been a journey, that's for sure, a journey both in my business profession and in my personal life that I'm glad to be here. I came out of the private equity group before this, and then the corporate world. And I've lived all over the United States. I lived in Singapore for 5 years, run the Asia Pacific division over there for a multinational conglomerate. So, I am glad to be here with SCI. I've been a volunteer for over 30 years, part of the executive committee before becoming a staff member. But SCI has been a big part of my life for 30 plus years, both personally and professionally now. And I'm glad to be here, and I've known you for a good part of that time, Mia. And thank you for all that you do and have done and continue to do for outdoors men and women, as well as gun owners and hunters out there around the world, but specifically here in the United States. And not many people know a lot about Safari Club International. We've kind of been behind the scenes doing most of the things that people take for granted, and we're trying to change that and communicate to people exactly what we do around the world, but as I said, mainly here in the U.S. So I'll let you get going with questions, and I'll hopefully rattle off the answers, and we'll cover all that we need to cover. But thank you for having me, and I look forward to our time together. I'll kind of just FYI, I'm out hunting, making a TV show, talking about conservation and talking about hunting and all that with Merlot waterfowl out in California with the fowl life. That's why I've got a hoodie on, and I look like Grizzly Adams because I haven't shaved, because I'm trying to get everything situated before convention. I actually leave tomorrow and go to the Weatherby Gala out in Dallas tomorrow, and I'm going to have to go from camo and a hoodie like I'm in now to a black tie tuxedo tomorrow, all in less than 24 hours. So you caught me while you could prior to convention, and then it's banquet season for all of our chapters and all of the convention season for the other associations in the industry. So catch me while you can is all I can say, and you caught me. So what do you got?
I feel pretty lucky to have caught you right now, because I do know that it's busy season. And actually for me, it's going into busy season also. And I'm excited that you're going to the Weatherby Gala, because that's something that is super important. But you mentioned your background and coming to SCI. So you were a member of SCI before you actually were in the position you're in now. What caused you to become a member of SCI?
Well, I became a member on a chapter level, and I think once I found out what SCI did and all that SCI does day in and day out, I realized that I needed to be part of that. And I got involved on a chapter level, and then I became a chapter president. I was a chapter president for two different chapters, two-term chapter president for two different chapters, and then I was a regional rep, and then I was a DAL. And then I became a member of the EC and was on the EC for a number of years. And then, I wanted to get involved. Once I found out what they did, and until you get involved, you really don't know what SCI does. But once you do, then everybody's all involved. And that's what we found out. It's interesting that people really don't know what Safari Club International does on Capitol Hill with our advocacy, as well as the foundation and our conservation. And once they do, they have an aha moment, and they're like, oh my gosh, why did I not know about this? Because, we're not like some of the critter organizations, as I call them, and they're great organizations, whether it's Ducks Unlimited, Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation, Mule Deer Foundation, or whatever. We're covering hunters across all species, not just a single species. And good example is that a lot of people don't realize that we've got 8 lawyers on staff that fight for hunters' rights every single day. None of the other hunting organizations combined have 8 on-staff lawyers. And that's a huge thing, because not only do we have our federal team that's led by Ben Cassidy up in our hunter embassy, that's literally, you can look out my door of our DC office and I can see the Capitol, that we're minutes from walking to the Senate office buildings as well as the House office buildings and everybody else. We are there on Capitol Hill fighting every single day for advocacy and hunting and hunters' rights. Not only that, we have individuals that take care of our state rights, whether it's Chris Thomason, whether it's B. Fredericks, the whole team that's fighting every single day for things that are happening on the state level. And we're doing all this behind the scenes, and we're trying our darndest to try to figure out ways that we can help better communicate all that we do day in and day out. So it's interesting. We have a number of people that say, what does SCI do? I'm a member. And we're like, wait a minute, do you not get your emails? Do you not get your magazine? Do you not get your newsletters? All that kind of stuff. And they're like, well, I kind of opted out of emails. And I'm like, well, there you go. You're not getting any of the emails from SCI as to what we're doing. But, we're doing so much work, whether it's wolves or grizzly bears. And I could go on and on and on about the different things that we're doing out there day in and day out on the state level, as well as the federal level, fighting for hunters' rights that most people don't even know that we're doing. And that doesn't, we're talking about the 8 attorneys that are on staff. Most people have attorneys, but they're on retainer. We have consultants and we have lobbyists and we have all those people on retainers as well. But we're also doing stuff right there in our own office, working with those same lobbyists that are working with us to do what we need to do, as well as outside attorneys and anything else that we can do to help further along our message.
Yeah, and that's something for the listeners. Laird's talking about all these different facets of what SCI does and where they are. And there is so much going on. And I know a lot of us, I mean, me included, I'm like, this is happening in my state and this is important. But there's a lot of stuff happening in every state.
Yes.
And you might even be amazed stuff's happening in Florida. Like, people don't even think of Florida as a hunting state, much less understand how much hunting there is, you know. And so that's something to, when you get these advocacy updates and you pay attention, you'll realize that you're not the only one. And while each state is important, there's a lot to cover. And that's why SCI employs so many people that are working on this. So thank you for giving that kind of overview. Laird, for the listeners, like a year ago, I guess December 2022, I went to the National Assembly of Sportsmen's Caucuses from the Congressional Sportsmen's Foundation. And this year I didn't go. It was way back east and didn't really fit in my schedule. But how does SCI compare to like CSF or the Sportsmen's Alliance or someone like that?
Well, CSF is a great organization, and we were one of the first people involved with CSF. We helped found CSF, from the beginning. It is a Congressional Sportsman Foundation that is, led by those in Congress, and we work closely with them. They have state people on their payroll as well that handle all the state issues. We work hand in hand with them. We work hand in hand with them on the federal level, and it's all about working together in order to make things happen. The Congressional Sportsman Foundation, CSF as we call them, they're more in step with what we're doing in every single state across the United States, whereas you've got Sportsman Alliance that are more specific state focused in a regional area, not so much a national area. Great group as well, but they're more regional focused. And what we're trying to do is to make sure that what happens in one state doesn't carry over to another state. That's why we have to look at it from a national standpoint. And a lot of people, they say SCI, it stands for, Safari Club International. They're only doing things in Africa. They're only doing things internationally. That is so far from the truth. 60% of what we do every single day is U.S. based. Not North America based, but U.S. based. So that's where we're spending the majority of our time, more than the majority of our time, in all that we do. And some people kind of think of the word safari as Africa, and that's where they get that from. But safari is a Swahili word for journey. And it doesn't matter if it's a journey from one city to the next, or one county to the next, or one state to the next, or the U.S. to Mexico or Canada, or one continent to the next. It's a journey, and that's what it's all about. So we can't be boxed into saying, oh, it's just Africa and it's just about what's happening in Africa and the international side of the business. We're fighting right now for a lot of what's happening in Australia and New Zealand, specifically Australia and duck hunting right now, and New Zealand, and what they're trying to do with tar and chamois over there. And there's something somewhere every single day in every single continent, on every single state, that we're fighting. And a lot of people do get boxed in, and they go, well, they're not doing anything about, this tadpole down here in Colorado. Well, yeah, we are. Well, we're having to do it from a different angle, and you might not know about it. And we're not hunting a tadpole, but we're working on the conservation and from that angle as well. So there's a lot.
And it's the rusty crayfish right now. Just to let you know.
There you go. That's it.
We can now have rusty crayfish that are alive, but only for, I think, 48 or 72 hours. So that's the latest out of our commission here in Colorado.
and it's amazing how I call it the purple squirrel phenomenon. They don't want you to focus on this, so they say, oh, look at the purple squirrel running over there, so that you take your focus off of what's happening. And SCI really has to stay focused on what that topic is, whether it's grizzly bears or whether it's wolves or whether it's the import and export of trophies out of the European Union and those countries, or Africa for that matter, or even hunting and gun laws as it relates to bringing in guns into Canada or Mexico and things of that nature. And we have to be very careful that we don't get caught off guard, because we use scientific data and scientific facts. The individuals that are out there spreading, false information about what's happening with animals. A good example is elephants. Elephants are overpopulated in Africa, and they're like white-tailed deer here in the United States. And they're tearing up the fauna and flora that's happening over there in the continent. And when you've got a carrying capacity of 3,000 elephants based on the food source and land and all that kind of good stuff, and you have 36,000, that's a problem. Or you have carrying capacity of 8,000 and you have 48,000, that's a problem. And you still see commercials pulling at your heartstrings about, they're endangered or they're going to go extinct, and that is the furthest thing from the truth. And those people are keyboard warriors. They've never been to the continent. They're just being told what they need to be told. And you've got people that don't look at the facts and don't look at the data. And that's what we have. And we've got Lorraine's boss, Dr. Comer. You used to talk about Lorraine being on the call the other day. Dr. Comer and the foundation, they're making all these white papers, and they're getting these data sources from people that are on the ground in these countries, whether it's Australia, New Zealand, or one of the European Union countries, or whether it's Africa, or even here. Maria Davidson is one of the most world-renowned large carnivore specialists that are out there, and she was with the Game and Fish, and now works for SCI and is doing fantastic work with us on trying to get this grizzly bear delisted. And it's, emotion versus scientific data and scientific fact. It's kind of like, are you going to believe everything you're told on Facebook because it's on Facebook? Are you going to?
A lot of people do.
Oh, they do. It's terrible. Are you going to learn? Are you going to listen to what professionals are telling you with data to back it up and science to back it up? And that's where people struggle.
Definitely. And so you mentioned that people aren't getting the advocacy information on occasion, which I experience that with my email list sometimes too.
Yep.
If they're not receiving that, or if they had opted out, how can they opt back in, or how can they get back on the list to receive the emails?
First of all, they can send it to me or to you, and we'll get it to our IT people, and we'll get them re-added, for lack of a better phrase. But that's what's happening. People are like, I'm not getting this, and we're like, what's your email address? And we go in there and they're like, oh, you opted out in 2021, 3 years ago. Oh, yeah, I forgot about that. I was, and then we get them back in, or they've had the wrong email address because they changed jobs, or they went from, Yahoo to Gmail or AOL to something else, and they forgot to update their membership. They can go onto the website, and they can also get a lot of this information on our website at safariclub.org is where you need to go. Because we have so many people that go to www.sci.org and they're like, you're not online. No, you have to go to safariclub.org in order to get that information. So just kind of let everybody know that's where they need to go to find out all of that information for them.
And that actually, I have personal experience with that, for changing email addresses and having to figure out, like, why am I not getting this stuff? And it was as simple as calling the 1-800 number on the website and saying, can you please help me get my emails again? And voila, there they were. Yeah. So it's pretty simple to stay up to date. And do you have to be a member, Laird, to get those emails, or can somebody not be a member and receive emails?
You can. We have got a program called HAAC, Hunter Advocacy Association, and those members of HAAC, you can sign up there online. Again, you can go to www.safariclub.org, and you can sign up for what's called HAAC, and that lets us put you on a list that if there is some issue associated with specifics in your city or state or region that we need you to write a letter, we will notify you and have a letter that you can use as an example to send to your congressman or woman in order to help communicate your feelings and your position on any kind of industry, for that matter, whether it's hunting or fishing or gun type of stuff that SCI is involved in. And that HAAC is something that we definitely need everybody involved with.
When you guys came out with that, that was such a great thing, because it really simplifies that process for people who don't know what to do. And I actually have courses and webinars about how to contact legislators, how to speak, how to, go to Capitol Hill in DC and talk to the legislators, stuff like that. So for the listeners, if you want that, I will include that in the show notes. You had talked about carrying capacity and the elephants, and I've spoken about that on past episodes. But for the listeners also, there are webinars about that. I'll include links to both in the show notes for you. Laird, talking about carrying capacity, to me, that's part of conservation, which you also mentioned a little while ago. In your mind, what is conservation? We actually had a young person that was applying for a scholarship recently, and I understand younger people, they may not have the years that we've got under us, but they didn't understand what the question was, what is conservation? And so can you tell us what conservation means to you?
Yeah, conservation means the opportunity for us to maintain a species, our species, and have that species grow and continue to expand. And the best way to do that in our mind is hunting. There is an organization out there, I think it's Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation, that said hunting is conservation. By us hunting, we, the hunters, are the biggest conservationists that are out there. The last thing we want as hunters is an animal to go extinct, because then we can't hunt it anymore. Why in the world would we do that? That's the stupidest idea that there is. We want these particular species, the animals and on all that, to prolific and become more prolific than they already are. And it's important that folks recognize that fact, that conservation is helping a species grow and become, what it could be. Now, having said that, there is the carrying capacity that we just talked about. There is only so much carrying capacity that white-tailed deer can have, that elephants can have, that grizzly bears can have. Because once it starts affecting other species, i.e. grizzly bears are decimating the elk populations, that's when it needs to start becoming controlled. And these people have all these crazy ideas about, we can give them birth control. They're not human beings. You're not going to be able to go out there and shoot a female grizzly bear with some kind of dart that's got some kind of birth control in it. That doesn't work. It's, it sounds good, and it's a great way to get funding from some government agency and all that stuff, but it's not going to work. And they're trying to do everything they can for it not to be hunting, but at the end of the day, hunting is going to be your biggest form of being able to help conservation control the species populations, especially when it starts decimating other species. And wolves are in that same exact category. Wolves are decimating the mule deer populations, the whitetail populations, the elk populations, and it's just, history repeating itself. Why did they eradicate wolves back in the day? Because they were decimating species. Well, now they want to reintroduce them, and what's happening? They're decimating species again, including cattle and everything else. So history is repeating itself. Do we need wolves? Yes. Do I have a problem with wolves? No. But you should be able to hunt them. You should be able to control the species if it starts affecting other species. Because who's going to be out there protecting the elk, the mule deer, the white-tailed deer, and everything else that's out there? The same with grizzly bears. Do I have a problem with grizzly bears? No, not at all. I think they're pretty cool, actually. Do we need to regulate them? Yes, you hunt them to regulate them. And, that's how you go about doing it. So conservation is helping to regulate, and increase the population of certain animal species, not only in the United States, but worldwide. Because Africa cannot have a carrying capacity of 3,000 in a country, and they've got 33,000 or whatever the number is. That counts, aerial counts and other data counts in which they go about counting animal species have shown us. That answer your question?
It definitely does. And it's a great answer to the question. And I also thought of while you were talking about that. I went to high school and college in San Diego, and while I was there, and this will date myself again, before Laird and I were recording, I said something that dated me, but when I was in college, they eliminated the mountain lion hunt in California. And since they did that and quit killing mountain lions, they actually kill more lions now than they did back then. And they're still being killed, but it's the government now, the state agencies, that are killing them rather than hunters. And the hunters provide revenue to the state. So that's how hunters kind of fit into the conservation model. They also fit into the funding model. And this is something that I know in my state of Colorado, they as in other people besides hunters, they're trying to get more credit for the funding of wildlife. And the thing is, you can buy your stamps, you can buy stickers, you can buy magazines, but it doesn't fund it the same way that hunters do. And you don't have those boots on the ground people that are seeing what's going on in the woods and whether there are, sick deer that maybe have ruling disease. Hunters will see that, and hunters actually deeply care for wildlife, and they don't want to see an animal suffering. So they report it to the agency, and the agency can come and do autopsies if needed, if something crazy went on, and they can see what sicknesses are out there and why populations are fluctuating. So hunters really play a key aspect in there, but sorry to go on that tangent, Laird. It's just something that popped in when you were talking about that, because I think some people don't realize the intricacies of managing wildlife. It's not just about killing. And so speaking about just killing, some people also have the fallacy that we kill for a trophy. And to me personally, the trophy is in the eye of the beholder. I have taxidermy in my house. I have a red stag right here in front of my desk. And to me, this probably doesn't make record book. I'm an SCI scorer, and this is nothing special in a record book aspect. But can you kind of talk about why the record book is important and what it's used for other than a status symbol?
Well, look, a lot of people do kill for trophies, but I don't think that the average hunter does, to put it in the record book. I think that the average hunter is like myself and you, and that is the trophy is in the eye of the beholder. I've got a ton of taxidermy work in my house, but it's not to show off, anything. It's to remind me of the memory, and that's the key. And whether it's one of my sons that shot this deer or this elk or this animal, whatever it may be, that's what it's there to remind me of. And every single animal that I have taxidermied in my house, I can tell you every single bit about the hunt. Whether it was just me, whether it was me and my kids or my wife or whatever the case may be, I could tell you the location, might not be able to tell you the year because as we get advanced age, we don't remember years as much, but I can tell you the hunt and all that's going on there. But I think that what the record book does for us is it gives us the taxonomy information so that we can, again, use data to fight misinformation that's out there. Because when people go, oh my gosh, the average elephant tusk, has fallen drastically over the last number of years, and they're like, wait a minute, we've got a record book that has more entries than the other record books out there combined, such as Roland Ward, which was started in the 1800s, in Europe, and was primarily Africa, and all of the other record books that are out there. We have all of this taxonomy work that has the date, the information as to weight, length, tine length, elephant tusk length, or whatever the case may be. And we use that data, again, from our scientific information to combat misinformation. And I encourage everybody to enter in, their animals' information into the record book. And you don't have to use your name. We've got an opportunity for people to enter their information in using the name of anonymous. We just need the data of how big was that white-tailed deer, how big was that elk, how big was that red stag from Argentina, how big was that, lion from Africa. So that when people go, oh, you're shooting young lions, we go, no, we don't. Here's a record that's stating that's not the case over the last 3, 5, 10 years. And yes, it is based on information that is entered in. But where are they getting the information from? They're not. We at least have the information where it's getting entered in. It's not just a subjective comment. It is an objective comment that states the facts. So whether you're a record book person and people go, oh, I'm not entering my stuff in the record book, I'm just not a record book person, that's fine. Then enter the information on the animal under anonymous where your name doesn't have to be there. And that way we have this taxonomy information that we can use to combat misinformation. And that's one of the big keys that we've got to use and to get is this information so that we can communicate correctly.
Absolutely. I just recently saw that there's a Pope and Young world record Canada moose that just made the book, and they just sent the press release for that. So that was pretty exciting, because to me, it also shows that we talked about carrying capacity, and carrying capacity means you have to have a habitat that will support those animals. And if you're getting an animal that can make a world record book, then somebody's doing something right with the habitat in that area. So that's part of that whole, the numbers that we see with an animal is partly the management. So it's something that, like Laird said, we can use that to see what's going on in the world, and not just data to fight anti-hunters, but a lot of other things with that data as well. And I mentioned to Laird before we started that I'm an outdoor writer. I've actually looked up in Boone and Crockett, Pope and Young, Safari Club in the record books to see like where are the most mature animals, and some of them aren't the oldest, but they're the biggest in certain areas, depending on what minerals are there, what kind of pressure they're getting from other predators and stuff like that. And so if you're looking for a good place to hunt, you might go search record books and see where big animals are coming from, because you can get a big animal in that area likely.
Yeah, and it all ties back into conservation. And what I mean by that is I was born and raised in Mississippi. We have a hunting club down there, and we have a biologist that comes in and looks, and he's like, this is what your carrying capacity is for this property. And, you know, they told us, you've got too many does, and you need to harvest more does on your property. Otherwise, you're going to have a browse line because there's going to be a food source shortage and this, that, and the other. And if you want to, you know, continue to grow large deer and have them healthy, you're going to need to harvest more does. And we went from, you know, normally harvesting 35 does off of this property to, he says, you probably need, this is coming from a professional, this is coming from a biologist that does this for a living. He says, you need to harvest between 55 and 60 does. And that's what our membership is looking to do, because we want to follow the science that's going to keep the herd healthy and is going to have the conservation necessary to increase and have the species prolific in our area. So there you have it.
And that's something that I learned. We did the chapter leadership training at Lazy CK Ranch in Texas, and during the shutdown. So when we went there, being a Western hunter, you know, from Colorado, it's a lot of public land where I live, a lot of mountains, spot and stalk hunting. And when you would think of Texas and something that is a high fence hunt or something like that, it was really kind of like, oh, I don't know about that. And I was amazed because the biologists were there just before we had started our event. And, you know, they do, just as you said, they go through, they assess how many animals, they look at the habitat, and they're, you know, and so it's not as though they just get to throw these animals in there and then you just have free range and slaughter them all. It's actually a managed situation where the biologists are helping them to understand what their property can maintain. So it's really interesting if you open your mind and look around and see why certain people do what they do. And another story that comes to my mind is the hunt in Russia where they hunted moose with dogs. And that was very counterintuitive to me, even though I hunt lion and a New Mexico bear with dogs. I was like, why would you hunt this moose? Well, then I got there and I saw the terrain, saw all the habitat, and I was like, now I understand. So it's definitely really neat to open your mind and go see other places. And you talked about a lot of stuff that you have in your house, taxidermy and such, memories. What are some of your favorite or most memorable hunts that you've ever been on?
Oh, I think number one's with my kids. I think that's the first and foremost. And of course, my dad. You know, he and grandfather, those are the ones, you know, that come to mind. I'll give you a good example. People ask me all the time, you know, you're the CEO of SCI and SCIF, and you've hunted all over the world. I won the World Hunting Award ring. I was the 90th person to ever do that. and you've hunted all this stuff and you've taken all these animals. What's your favorite hunt? And I said, or what's your favorite? They asked me, what's your favorite thing to hunt? And I said, my favorite thing to hunt is DDT. And they go, what do you mean DDT? I said, my favorite thing to hunt is DDT, deer, ducks, and turkeys. That's my favorite thing to hunt. I can go to Australia and New Zealand all day long. I can go to South America all day long and, hunt big game, red stag, whatever the case may be, or even doves and ducks, or I can go to Europe and I can go to Africa and hunt all these places. But my favorite thing to hunt's, deer, ducks, and turkeys. And that's just the way it is. And all of the stuff, that is on my walls is a memory, and it'll be a memory for my whole life. And that's why they're on the wall. And that's why I do what I do, is to make sure that my kids and that my grandkids will be able to have those same memories. And that's what our convention is all about. We have a convention once a year. It's going to be in Nashville, January 31st through February the 3rd. And it'll be in Nashville for a while. You'll hear a big part of that at the convention. And that's our fundraiser. That's our biggest fundraiser. And what affords us the opportunity to protect that right to hunt by hiring the people that we do that are out there day in and day out protecting our right to hunt. And not to mention, we have a chapter program. And these chapters are doing things on the local level. They have banquets. If you can't make it to Nashville, to the national convention, please make it to your local chapter banquet. Unlike most other, as I mentioned earlier, critter clubs that are out there, where they send 100% of their banquet funds to nationals, SCI only sends 30% to nationals. The other 70% is kept right there in the local communities and doing the local stuff. So if you go out there and you go, what does the local chapters do? Well, they have a banquet. 70% of the funds raised stay local. 30% is sent into nationals to help fight the good fight, both on the local and national level. But that's not what the rest of these other organizations do. So if you were to go to a DU event or a National Wild Turkey Federation event, which I go to, by the way, all those money that they get raised there all goes back to the corporate office. That's not what we do. We want the chapters involved locally, and we want that 30% to be sent in so that we can help fight the fight in Washington, D.C. That's the key.
And I, too, am members of some of those other organizations and go to their events and such like that. But a lot of them are working a lot on habitat and things like that. Some of them will find funds to help fight a wildlife issue or initiative or stuff like that. But generally, they're working on habitat and the conservation aspect rather than fighting the fight. So that's kind of a difference. I know I asked you earlier the difference of, the Alliance and the Congressional Sportsmen's Foundation, but for the difference between some of those Rocky Mountain Elk and NWTF is a little nuances, and we're all needed, which is why we're all here. But I really wanted to share today, Laird, and thank you, what SCI does and why we do it, and kind of dispel a few of the nuances that you talked about, the stuff we see on social media about why we do this, or, we're just killers or whatever. And so thank you for sharing that. And I'm glad you mentioned convention, because I'm getting excited about convention and look forward to seeing everybody there. And hopefully some of my listeners will be there. Last year I met a couple of you over at the women's meetup when we were there. So maybe I'll see some more there this year. So I hope that you're excited too, Laird. I know you're going to be buried, and I really appreciate you taking the time out of your schedule to meet with me.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And I don't know if I've told you this or not, but my wife and kids called convention before I started, as an employee of SCI, they called convention Daddy's Spring Break. It was Daddy's Spring Break, just like spring break for the kids. You're going to the beach, you're going here, there, yonder. This was Daddy's Spring Break. I was packing weeks before the convention. I was getting ready. I was looking to see what, outfitter I wanted to go see, what seminar I wanted to attend. I was going to the banquets every night to do that, and all the entertainment afterwards. So, it was Daddy's Spring Break is what they called it. And they called it that for the whole time they were growing up, because I was going to every single one of the banquets I could, and that was just how it worked out for us. But Daddy's Spring Break is coming up. They reminded me that the other day, as we laughed. And they're now grown. and they are attending on their own as well. So it's all good from their perspective. But convention is definitely mom and dad's spring break, for lack of a better phrase. We get to get dressed up in our tuxes some nights. And if for those that don't like to do that, you don't have to. You can go in blue jeans and boots and just enjoy what Nashville has to offer and come to the convention during the day and get day passes and things like that. But it is going to be an epic convention. We've got Jason Aldean on Thursday night after the auction and banquet itself, and we encourage everybody to come see Jason and all that entertainment. 38 Special is Wednesday night, Big and Rich is Friday night, and then Foreigner is the entertainment Saturday night. So we've got, rock and roll boxing in country there in the middle, and that doesn't even include what happens at the after parties. So sleep will be a missing element at your stay in Nashville, because there is always something going on to the wee hours of the morning. And then you get up for the 7:00 life member breakfast and veterans breakfasts and everything else that are happening for breakfast. There's not a time that is spent during convention that there's not something going on that you can attend.
For sure. And you spoke a little bit about a hunt that you may book. It's for the listeners, it's not only hunting. Like our plan, we already have a fishing trip that we're going to book when we get there. And so there's other things. You can also buy furniture, jewelry, clothing. There's so much there. So it really is fun. And for me, the best part is the people. Seeing all the people there with all those meetups and all of that is the best.
Well, if you've hunted with some of these people, it could have been 5, 10, 15 years ago. This might be the only time you get to see them once a year, because they're in Spain or they're in, Africa or they're in New Zealand. This is the only time that you get to see them, because they're working and, you're not hunting with them because you've been there, done that. And you still want to share the hunt that you went on and refer people to a great time that you did have and make it happen.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much. And I won't keep too much more of your time because I know you're a very busy man. I hope to see the production you guys are making pretty soon.
Absolutely. Just wait. It's going to be a big time. So I look forward to seeing you in Nashville, and, let's catch up then. Catch me if you can.
All right. Thank you, Laird.
All righty. Take care.
Reminding you that the podcast you're listening to is a proud member of the Self Defense Radio Network. Check out all the great content at selfdefenseradio.net.